Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Pears on a Pod. This is episode 16, and we have a very, very special guest to join us for this ep. But firstly, I shall introduce the man that has more Twitter accounts than Twitter itself. Huddo, welcome to the show.
Hey, mate. That's an interesting one. More Twitter accounts than Twitter itself. I'll give you that.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah, very excited to be back again.
It's good to have you on and back ready to go. But we shall introduce our special guest straight away. He played 20 games for Port Adelaide. He's played for 3 different clubs, including Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs. He was a runner-up in the McGarry Medal. His brother was also on Big Brother. I shall speak of Nick Lower. Nick, welcome to the potty.
G'day, guys. Thanks for having me. As I said to you off air, I certainly feel like you must be scraping the barrel having me on, but it is nice to relive the footy career once again.
It's always good, mate. We're delighted to have you. And we did put a bit of a shout out on our Instagram about certain people like you'd love to see interviewed on the pod. And Tommy Logan was straight onto us mentioning your name. We're just like, let's go, let's do it.
Of course, Tommy was. Of course he was. So he's responsible for a lot of things that happened in my life, Tom Logan.
We'll definitely ask you about that quite shortly. But firstly, what have you been doing since your playing days ended, mate? What have you been up to?
Mate, well, it feels like a long time ago since I pulled on the boots professionally, but lots happened since. I've sort of, as you said, played for 3 clubs. So as a result of that, moved around the country. So I think it was 22, I left Port. So born and bred Adelaide boy, got on a plane and shot over to Perth for a few years, which was great. And then eventually made my way to Melbourne, which post-footy career stayed in Melbourne for a long time. And when I was playing, as you mentioned, I've got a twin brother, Ed. He had a pretty hopeless career as well and wound up at sort of 21, 22. I think he retired with a knee injury, but he fell into sports management. So he obviously took on my contract. You can't say no to that, although it wasn't much of a payday for him. But sort of the one thing that he really pushed was that you had to work on your day off. So he got me into commercial property, and I used to do a day a week at CBRE as part of one of the AFL programs that they had. And yeah, it sort of the career started from there. So really fell in love with commercial property pretty quickly. And I was really fortunate because when I did end up sort of exiting the game for good at sort of 25 or whatever it was, sort of walked straight into a job the next Monday. So, mate, it's been good. It's taken me here, there and everywhere. I now live in Sydney with my beautiful wife and couple of kids, and got another one on the way. And
Well done.
Thanks, got a little football now. I've got 2 girls who of course can play AFL, but we've just found out we're having a little boy. So hopefully it'll definitely be a Norwood boy, and who knows, maybe a Port Adelaide boy as well.
Interesting combo, Port Adelaide and Norwood.
I know. It was always a difficult one to fight myself over internally, but no, I was very, very lucky to have played for the club.
We just spoke about Norwood and Port. You started 2005 all the way back at Norwood. Tell us about those days and working your way towards an AFL career.
Oh, mate, I mean, I look back on my days at Norwood as a kid and working my way through all the junior systems, and I've got such fondest memories of Norwood as a footy club. And obviously the rivalry with the Magpies was such a big thing growing up, and it was a big thing the day that came where the name was called out at the draft to be a Port Adelaide player. It was sort of a bit confronting going down to Alberton. But look, Norwood was fantastic. Unfortunately, when I was there, we didn't have the best of successes. We were sort of cellar dwellers for quite a while. Matty Thomas, Dave Roden, we all used to trug our way out to training knowing that on Saturday, if we didn't play for the Power, we were playing for Norwood and probably going to get smashed. But fortunately, I did have one year where it was the year after I got delisted actually from Port. I ended up having a complete year out of AFL, which is a story in itself as to why that happened. But I managed to play for Norwood in 2010, which was the year that Nathan Bassett came to the club, and he really turned things around. So we unfortunately lost in a grand final to Centrals by 5 points or something, I think it was in the end. So pretty bitter way to finish, but look back at the club now and what they've gone on to do post my time there, and really, really, really proud of Norwood and what they've managed to achieve.
Yeah, we'll take you back to 06 as well, like your first season in the AFL system and your debut against the Doggies. What was it like that year, and then making your first start?
But it was it was the introduction to the AFL was always pretty daunting. I still remember my very first day of training. And it was funny, I'd known Choco not directly through footy. He actually lived next door to my grandpa, directly across the road. So to be honest with you, when my name got called to play for Port, I thought, geez, this is going to be easy. He lives across the road from my grandpa. He can't not pick me. But gee, I was wrong. I'll tell you what. So rocked up to day one of training at I can't remember the name of it, but in the city, just outside of Adelaide, where we did a lot of preseason. And my first training partner was Logs, who'd obviously just come off a list of Brisbane and was working his backside off to try and get on the rookie list. And yeah, I mean, little did I know how good a runner he was, and I got paired with him, and he was really showing me up. And then I still remember we got paired up to have a kicking session. It was literally just kick to kick, but I was so nervous. I was just grubbering every ball, and I looked over at the coaches, and they all thought, I could see it in their eyes. They thought, shit, who have we just picked up? 2006 was an interesting year because obviously 04 we've come off the grand final, and 05 was a bit of a readjustment, and then 2006 pretty quickly we're rebuilding the list almost. But unfortunately, I think it was round one, round two, maybe not round one, but round two, I think I was in the squad to play, and again it was probably gifting me a game because we were real bit rebuilding, but I had to go back. I didn't. I think I can't remember. It may have been an emergency, but went back and played in Norwood and snapped my thumb, and that was sort of it for 16 weeks or something. So, sort of first year was a bit of a disappointment, but once I got over that injury, was fortunate enough to make my way back into the team and play. But yeah, look, that was really just giving me a taste. So, 2007 was obviously a much better year for us. We obviously had an amazing draft that year with who we picked up, and I think back about 2007, and it was a really funny time for me personally because the team was going so well, and I'd always had Michael Wilson as my mentor, and Wilbur, was probably 56 at the time, and everyone thought, when's he going to retire? And of course, for me, it was pretty clear if Wilbur didn't play, I'd be playing. But he just had a great run that whole year, and he was always so good to me. He was always really pushing for me to get selected. But again, I don't know the numbers, but I think I ended up having about 17 or 18 games as emergency, and couldn't break into the side. So it was a good year to see the team go so well, but obviously a frustrating one personally. So there's some really fond memories of the club. Obviously just didn't play as many as I would have liked.
Breaking your thumb, snapping your thumb, rather. How did you do that? That's grim as.
Yeah, if you remember the brick wall at Norwood Oval that's still there, there was a big tussle. There was a big tussle on the wing, and I think I was trying to be a hero, and sort of like I think I sort of hit my thumb on the wall, and it snapped right back, and I had plates and all that sort of stuff put in my thumb. Anyway, it wasn't fun, but I survived, and it's all good to this day. But it's those little things that you think about. Think, oh shit, if had that not happened, what happens with your career? Not that things went downhill from there, but it would have been nice to start the team a little bit earlier. But as I said, some really fond memories of the club.
You did make your debut against the Dogs in Darwin, of all places. Making your debut up there. What was it like playing in Darwin in general? Because obviously it was through those years, there was a lot of games played between Port and the Dogs. What was that like, especially for your debut?
Mate, it was bloody slippery. I remember, I still remember there's a great photo after the game of me, Bence, Matty Thomas, and I can't remember who the other one was. There was four of us who debuted in the last couple of weeks, and could have been Logs actually in that photo. And
right.
Yeah, it was great to have that win. I can't remember where we were sitting on the ladder, but it certainly wouldn't have been high. And the Dogs were obviously a pretty strong team back then, and some of the players that you got to play against that day, that eventually some of them, I ended up being coached by when I eventually went to the Dogs, and guys like Crossy and Smithy and Ryan Griffin and these blokes, Higo, they're all guys that at the time you have a perception of other players. And I still remember on the field, my first game, Daniel Cross really getting stuck into me, and that sort of stuck with me my whole career. I had a couple of tussles with him when I went to Freo. And then eventually became a teammate, and he's a lovely bloke, and him and I got on like a house on fire. But it's just funny what footy clubs do to you, and you obviously, stick to the pack and the blokes that you play with. And I just remember that night was one of those games where pretty testing conditions, but, all the older blokes really took control of that game and won, which is fantastic for your first game.
Do you remember what Crossy said?
Oh mate, he's got a wicked tongue on him, Crossy, and he's bloody quick-witted. So I remember, I can't remember what we did to him, but he had a thing for me and my brother. Like I remember my brother used to get in big tussles with him too. So again, I don't know why. I thought like we were imposing players or players that you target, but yeah, we used to have some great little tussles verbally and physically. So it was fun.
And a couple of weeks later, like another physical sort of game, showdown, and win against all odds. What was it like? Like your third game, you're playing in a showdown.
Yeah, well, mate, it's hard to describe showdowns to people that aren't from Adelaide. And again, I was fortunate to go from showdowns to derbies, and they've got the same sort of atmosphere, like everyone, the whole town's on edge about who's going to win. And again, same thing. We certainly weren't picked to be the winner that day, and really physical game. And again, we were fortunate. I still remember guys like Brogues and Dom Cassisi and the Corns boys, playing their part. And I think that back end of the year, like we were struggling, and we were just sort of blooding some new players. And I think the one thing that Port always had the advantage of is this sort of gritty older group of players that sort of knew how to win, and they were really demanding too. Everyone's obviously got their own opinion of what Dean Brogan's like, but on the field he's a pretty demanding bloke, and he's nothing like that off the field. He's a pussycat off the field, but I just remember that they were great fun, and again to get a win in your first showdown, it was huge. So great memories once again.
You came in a year of pretty much transition. There was a lot of changes, obviously, with Treaders coming as captain.
Yeah.
Obviously Choco as coach, but also Gavin Wanganeen retiring. What was, as a whole, that period, especially with Treaders as a leader, what was that like?
I still remember Gav that year, and I grew up sort of idolising Gavin Wanganeen, and then for him to become a teammate. I still remember, can't remember where we were, maybe Caloundra in Queensland was where we had the preseason that year. And, I remember Gav being sort of the older statesman of the team and actually not training that much. And I thought, geez, it's pretty good preseason when you get to, your late 20s, early 30s. But, probably didn't have an appreciation for, all the knowledge around you. And, I just remember guys like Darryl Wakelin and Michael Wilson and, Toby Thurstons and guys that have been around the club for a long time, taking the time to sort of explain to you what it means to have a long career. And, again, it's only now I'm 35 and you sort of think about some of the advice you were given. And I still remember Darryl sort of always saying, just take a breath, take in what you're doing, ask questions of people. But at the time, you're 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, and you're a million miles an hour. But yeah, that was a really interesting year, especially, with Treaders taking on the captaincy and what that involved, and sort of a lot of the media hype I do recall about what was going on at the club. You don't really get a really good insight until you're there about how much it can actually affect, not just individuals, but the club itself. So it was a pretty whirlwind first year, to be honest.
And like 07, you said that like you emergency many times. How close were you to potentially pulling on the Guernsey for the grand final?
Oh, mate, it's look, Choco might tell a different story, but I can tell you after. So the prelim was interesting because in the prelim we played North Melbourne, and I don't like to say it, but my brother was having a pretty good year that year as a second-year player coming off a rookie list. And I was either going to a grand final to watch my twin brother play in a grand final or to watch my team play. And as I said, Norwood weren't a fantastic league side, so I had to play reserves, or it could have even been, I wouldn't have been 19, so it must have been reserves, and just to keep fit, and obviously got the green light from the SANFL to do it. So I wasn't at the game for the first half, and I can't remember who we played, but I got to the ground at halftime, and as I walked into the rooms at halftime, again, I can't remember who it was, but someone came up to me and said, mate, I can't believe it, but you're going to be playing in the grand final. Because we were miles ahead, I think, at halftime. And, I said, oh, what's happened? I said, mate, Will was done his Achilles.
Yeah.
And the whole year it was, if Will was not playing, you're playing. So, I still remember sort of the feeling going, shit, your heart sinking, all that sort of stuff. And then, look, after the game, obviously we had the win, and I remember Choco and a couple of other coaches sort of coming up to me and patting me on the back. And then, when the week starts playing out, all AFL players would know this, sort of when Monday and Tuesday roll around, you sort of know if you're playing the next week, because main training sessions, sort of the main team and the reserves guys are the witches' hats almost. And for the first time that year, I'm in the main team on grand final week, and yeah, it was a surreal feeling for a couple of days. But then I think Choco must have had a moment of clarity and thought, shit, what am I doing putting Nick Lower in? And all of a sudden I got a very sheepish phone call from him. And look, it was a bittersweet moment because the bloke that ended up going in was Brad Symes, who's a great mate of mine. And, you know, we had a really tight group of friends there and still do. And, you know, again, I can honestly say it was obviously disappointing, but, you know, I still remember Symes, he'd calling me and he was genuinely upset that I wasn't playing. And, you know, I was really pumped for him that he was. So, yeah, look, it's an interesting one. And I do remember the day itself. It was I still remember the first quarter we were winning at quarter time, and I thought, you know, shit, you know, it's going to be hard to miss out of, you know, being a premiership player. But then obviously as the game drew on and the score sort of changed, I thought, oh, gee, maybe it's not a bad one to miss. but yeah, it was that was really the only game. There was a couple of other games here and there throughout the year that I was close, but for various reasons didn't break through. So yeah, 2007 was an interesting one because obviously Boki, Robbie, Westy, and all those guys coming into the team, and you know, it's pretty rare for so many first-year players to have an impact. It was pretty special and pretty special to look back on.
Yeah, and Simesy handled it well. I think he went to the Crows not a few weeks after.
Well, we can get into it later, but we organised a footy trip to Phuket that year, and that's probably one of the last Thailand footy trips I let you on. And still remember being on the beach, the whole team with Simesy when he got the phone call, and none of us knew. And he sort of hung up the phone and said, shit, you know, no one punched me, but I'm a crow now. And we thought, wow. So it was bloody surreal. So I got my dog going nuts. What? No, anyway, he'll bugger off. So yeah, it was really odd actually, because back then you didn't actually have that many trades. Like I remember, you know, 3-4 trades a year, and you know, you sort of saw them coming from a mile off. So it was certainly pretty odd for us all to be a part of. It was a funny year for the club, 2007, because again, I don't think everyone expected the rise to that level post what sort of 2005 and 6 was. So yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't take it out, and probably more unfortunate we couldn't get on a run for the years to follow that. But yeah, it was pretty special.
What was the off season like after that 2007 granny going into 2008? Was there a lot of optimism and a lot of all right, that's happened, let's go into 2008 with a big year again?
Mate, there was. Like, I remember pre-season 2008, sort of everyone, you know, you sort of feel it when people come back in good shape, and you sort of get a sense that people are determined to turn a corner. And I mean, obviously making a grand final is you know, although we're there to win grand finals, making a grand final is a pretty good year as well. So there was a lot to hang your hat on. But being young, I think everyone just expected that things would probably continue in that trajectory. And yeah, I mean the pre-season comp that year, I remember I played most of that pre-season comp, which for me personally, I was hoping that was a sign that I'd have one of those years that I play more regularly. But yeah, we had some strong form going into the season, but yeah, look, as the season played out, it just didn't really go to plan. So it's always a hard one to sort of get a sense of, you know, how the team's tracking, because obviously we had so many young players that probably played well and truly out of their skin in 2007, and not just identifying the first years, but the guys probably like first to 6 years that had really good years, and you know, guys like Sal and Chappie and all those sorts of guys. And then yeah, it's always hard to back it up, especially when you're young. So yeah, 2008 was a very, very sort of well measured pre-season. I remember some of the sort of planning that went into the year ahead, but again, just didn't correlate, unfortunately.
But you got the entire second half of the season as well, got games. So how did that feel to sort of actually get that consistent run going, probably for the first time in your career?
Yeah, mate. Again, as a player and anyone that's played sort of will understand the comment. Until you play regularly, you know, it's pretty common to not feel completely a part of it all, because the reality is you don't get to play the most important game of the week. So, yeah, look, it was sort of, for me personally, it was that first time that you feel fully invested in the club in its entirety. But yeah, again, you know, like was always sort of flagging myself as a midfielder, and sort of most of the games that I played at Port was sort of deep in defence, which I really enjoyed. But yeah, there was always this sort of feeling for me that being out of the team wasn't very far away. But yeah, I mean, I probably didn't get the full consistency of run until I got over to Freo. But I sort of think about that now, and I was a much more mature player, and had been around the traps for a while. So it's funny. Sometimes that clicks early, and sometimes it takes a few years to set in.
Did you feel that same feeling in 2008 coming into 2009 as well?
I think coming into 2009, I certainly felt like it was going to be a challenging year for me to stay on. Like, again, the one thing that Choco was always really honest. And again, you don't have to be a scientist to understand that, if you don't have a full year of games, especially if you're not injured, that at some point your time's going to come to an end. So probably the hardest part for me was, having a twin brother, especially in those first 4 years. Like Ed and I were sort of chalk and cheese. He rocked up at a club that, back then, no kid at 18 years old wanted to get drafted to North Melbourne because they had no facilities, they had no money, they were really struggling with the fan base. And Ed had to do it the hard way. He went through a rookie list and made it to that club. I still remember they had like demountable classrooms as their change rooms and stuff.
That's right.
Then. So it was really tough. But for him, it was the perfect club. He was playing, and when we'd have calls, it was sort of chalk and cheese of the journey. I wasn't a regular, and he was. So yeah, look, take 2009. Form was still good in the SANFL, and I sort of always found for various reasons that SANFL was always a league that I could find my top form in, and for whatever reason, I couldn't replicate that at top level. So again, it had its challenges, but I was fortunate to have a pretty good support base around me, and having a guy like Michael Wilson as your mentor and continue to be your mentors, a pretty good sounding board to have.
Yeah, coming towards the end of your time at Port, like, did you sort of know the writing was on the wall, or was there talks about moves to other clubs, or what was it sort of like? Because it would be tough.
Yeah, mate, it was. And again, I never saw myself leaving Adelaide, to be honest. But as I grew to the end of my career, or end of my time at Port, it was sort of funny. I made comment earlier about trade season. Well, 2009, I was talking to North Melbourne a lot about trying to get over there and play with my brother. And so we talked about the strategy about how that would look and going through the trade period. And that was the year that Favola moved, and there ended up being about, I can't remember, but it would have been 16 to 20 odd trades, and it was a lot for that period of time. There could have been more. And I still remember that period speaking to Justin Reid, my manager, about it all. And I mean, naive kid, I just assumed that I was playing AFL somewhere next year, and I think there was even an offer on the table from Port again, but I mean, it wasn't overly attractive. And then by the end of that period, I sort of got the call that nothing happened, and the reality set in that I'd not be playing AFL, which that was tough, because I look back at that time, and that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting to end up somewhere. And it sort of got overlooked. So I had to sort of, pick myself up and sort of strategize about what the next 12 months looked like. And, I had to go and get a job. Back then, I don't know what's happening in the SANFL now, but back then, they were paying well enough and giving you decent jobs at the club. But I wanted to try to do something away from football as well. So, I worked in an accounting firm, and, I was at the club a couple of extra days a week doing some stuff for Norwood. But, the whole plan was getting back into the AFL. And I was really clear about it. I was going to give myself 12 months to do it properly. And if it didn't work out, I'd happily play at state league level and move on from there. So again, fortunately, it worked out. And probably a big part of that was that, Norwood went from a cellar dweller to a title contender. So that probably helped a lot as well.
You did mention, obviously, the 12-month break. Going into the Magarey Medal, runner-up in 2010, you made a bit of a statement. Is there any chance you thought throughout the night, I've got this one?
Man, I remember back then they used to give you business class tickets to like London or something. I remember my girlfriend at the time, who's not my current wife. I remember she heard that, her name was Molly, and she gave me a bit of a hit, and her eyes just lit up, and all of a sudden she was into the whole night, because before that she couldn't care less. But it was like, it was typical. I know. But look, I mean, I you know, no one likes to talk about themselves too much, but I knew I'd had a good year, and it was really nice to see the team have a good year as well, because going into that count, you had guys like Paul Piopolo, Nick Dygan, Kieran McGuinness, who went on to be captain. You had these guys that all were playing great footy. Brett Zorzi, who you know, he was a fantastic SANFL footballer. You know, everyone was sort of being talked about as a chance. So, yeah, look, I mean, you know, Matty Thomas went on to win it, and Matty's a good mate of mine. He sort of rubs it in that he won it and I didn't. But, you know, yeah, look, at one point you think, geez, I'm actually a chance. I remember the last couple of rounds were pretty nervous, but, you know, if win it, don't win it, I much would have rather won a premiership the week after, which didn't eventuate. And I look at the guys that I did play with at Norwood that did go on to win premierships, and I'm certainly very jealous of them. So, yeah, it's a nice thing to talk about, but you know, other than you guys and maybe my mum and dad and brother, no one really remembers who comes second in the McGarry medal, unfortunately.
We do our research.
It's not something you put on your resume that anyone cares about.
Oh, I'd have it right at the top, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And then the move to Freo, like that's so good. Like, how did that all sort of happen? Like, did it happen quickly, or did they keep an eye throughout the year?
Completely out of the blue, only because I was set that I was moving to GWS. Choco had gone over there, and I think he must have felt bad about what had happened previously, and sort of he was speaking to me about you know, assisting getting me over there, and there's some other coaches involved at that club at the time that all wanted me to move, just looking for guys my age that had a bit of experience. So, you know, I remember at one point starting to look at houses and stuff in Breakfast Point, and getting sent all the documentation about GWS as a club and all that sort of stuff. So that was almost certainly happening. And remember, they had the first few draft picks in the rookie draft, and I was told that I was going to be one of those, and that didn't happen. So then I pretty much closed the computer and just thought, oh, well, I'm not getting picked up, because I hadn't been speaking to any other clubs. And then I got a phone call from David Walls 20 minutes later, who was the head recruiter at Freo at the time, and said, mate, welcome to Fremantle. And I thought, shit, Fremantle? That's not part of the plan. So off I went. And, you know, Freo to me was always a club that I did have a lot of respect for, and probably for me personally at the time, at that age, they'd obviously proven that they'd brought over rookie pick players, mature age players, and obviously turned them into you know, regular players in the team. So, you know, as soon as I heard that that's where I was heading, you know, I was certainly pleased about it, but it was nerve-wracking to move over the Nullarbor and move away from Adelaide for the first time. And
Mark Harvey was your coach too, so what was he like?
Yeah, look, I loved Harves. I only saw him the other day at the airport, actually, after a couple of months not seeing him. Yeah, on a business trip. But mate, he was great to me, and you know, I think for any AFL footballer, they've all got a level of talent. Sometimes you just need to find a place that sort of suits the way that you play, and have a coach that at that right time, you know, likes the way that you play and what you offer to the team. And that's certainly what I had with Harves. He was a great supporter of mine, and you know, everyone else that was involved in sort of the coaching panel were really good. And sort of I walked into that club in a bit of a weird stage of the club. There was a lot of young guys that were younger than me. I reckon there could have been close to half the list were younger than me, and I was only 22. Then there was sort of the top end, like your Pabs of the world and Luke McFarlane's, and then there sort of wasn't a huge amount of guys in the middle. So I sort of automatically fell into that middle range, guys like Garrick Ibbotson and even Nick Subin, who was only a year or two younger than us, sort of were seen as middle-aged players. So, yeah, it was great. I mean, moved over there, lived with Byron Shammer and a guy called Clayton Hinkley for about 6 months. Sham's an ex-Adelaide boy, so they were great at sort of showing me the ropes and showing me what to do and what not to do and all that sort of stuff. So that was great. But then after 4 to 6 months, I moved in with Mickey Barlow and lived with Mick ever since. So yeah, I really, really loved my time at Fremantle.
What was first game coming up against Port Adelaide? I think you played around 12 or 13 back at Amy Stadium.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, and mate, it was I was only having this chat with Logs the other day. I was in Adelaide and had a couple of beers with him, and we were reliving that night or that day. I can remember it, but Tom can't. I remember we had a tussle on the wing, which I thought was a bit of a joking fight, but he was taking it serious. So and he doesn't remember for whatever reason, but that's not uncommon. But it was, look, I mean, for me, obviously, I did. People asked, "Oh, did you feel like you had a point to prove?" And yeah, I did. I certainly felt like I wanted to, make a mark on that game. And it was the first time I'd really played forward. I'm certainly not a goal kicker, and I think my stats that day probably prove. I can't remember how many shots I had, but a few, and I only kicked one goal. I think I kicked one goal 4 or something, and probably a couple out in the fall. So, but good to win, and it's really strange playing against good mates of yours. I can't remember who played, but Logue's definitely played. Matty Thomas probably played. Don Cassisi probably played. Chad and all those guys who I'm really close with, and it's funny running past them and then giving you bumps, and then they know what I'm like, and I can get stirred up pretty easily, and they're all taking advantage of that. I played on Chappie, who I ended up being a groomsman in Chappie's wedding, years before that, and so it was strange, but nice to get a win. But it's also strange walking off the field seeing your mates a bit disappointed. So it was good. It was a good day all in all.
Yeah, only Brownlow motes of your career too. How good is
that? No, I didn't want to say that. I'm glad you did. But yeah, it's the only time that my name's ever going to get read out by the CEO of the AFL. So, it was a good day. We were all pretty happy about that win. And the club at the time, we were a young team trying to push towards finals. I think we were probably, 12th, 13th, 11th, somewhere around that part of the ladder. So we had a couple of really good wins that second half of the year at Freo, and very much unexpected wins too.
And then Ross the boss as a coach.
Yeah. Well,
what was he like?
Mate, he's I mean, in terms of coaches, I think it's pretty hard to look past Ross. Like the media, certainly makes a point about his style, and he demands a lot. And I still remember the first day that he walked into the club, and he brought up. Right, he brought up all of our 3K times and skin folds and all these other stats, and there was some pretty impressive times and stuff on that list. But he, I can't remember if he brought up the St Kilda times and equivalent statistics, whether they had names or not. But I mean, they were far better than ours. And he just pretty much from that second that he just ripped everyone apart. And everyone, doesn't matter if you're Matthew Pavlich or the first kid through the door. He just demanded excellence. And I mean, that's what he eventually got from the entire team. So, look, Ross and I had a bit of a love-hate relationship. When I say love-hate, I'm certainly not one of those players that talks back or anything like that. Far from it. But unfortunately, the end of my first year at Freo, I'm playing Collingwood at Subi, and I ended up getting reported and suspended for 4 weeks for hitting Dale Thomas. So I sort of started the year on a suspension, and then I also had a shoulder reconstruction, and that ended up getting a bit more complicated than it should have, and I ended up missing the first half of the year as it was. And Ross is one of those guys. He's pretty structured, and by then it was certainly pretty obvious that the team that he wanted to play was going to play, and he was really big on sort of the medical side of things and ensuring the players were looked after so they could play consistently throughout the year. So. Again, I sort of found myself in a dubious position where almost halfway through the year, when my shoulder's ready to go, I came back into the side, and sort of the writing already was on the wall. So disappointing, but again, it certainly doesn't sour my time there. I really enjoyed learning from Ross and sort of what he expected of people, and obviously the club was in a great shape in the years ahead under his tutorage.
So Daisy Thomas, I can't even remember the incident. What did you do? You just smacked him in the head?
It was like that year was when head-high contact really came into the game. Oh, yeah. And he Daisy actually pinned off Garrick Ibbotson about 5 minutes before, and Gaz went off with. Gaz actually did his shoulder in that incident, and it was a really sort of, blatant, obvious, just take him out sort of hit. And halves being halves was sort of yelling at everyone to go after Daisy. And again, it was a stoppage on the wing, and I just ran through. And I mean, he probably wouldn't remember, but he had his head over the ball, and I just ran straight through him, and pretty stupid. And then I contested. I think I got 3 weeks, and then I contested it, and they gave me 4. So. So that wasn't fun, but yeah, I think that was the second last game that was the second last game of the year, and then I didn't play the final one. I don't think, I can't remember. But anyway, that was my last game for Freo. Oh, sorry, no, it wasn't. That was my last game for Freo under halves. So things changed pretty quickly the following year.
Yeah, ended up going to the Bulldogs. How was that for yourself?
Well, that was the first year that the delisted free agency came into play, and I had just organised the footy trip for Freo to go to Hong Kong, and we just got back. And 2 days later, I got a phone call from Chris Bond, head of footy ops, and Ross, and they said, "Mate, you've got to come into the office." And I thought, "Oh, shit, what have they found out our footy trip?" And then I walked in, and I knew pretty quickly that it wasn't to do with that, so I was pretty relieved. And then, I ended up having, I can't remember the detail, but it would have been probably a 2-hour meeting. And to be honest, I got blindsided. I'd signed a 2-year extension just before Ross had taken the head job, and so I certainly wasn't expecting to not be there for my third year at the club. But we had some pretty blunt conversations about probably where I sat in the pecking order, and Ross had said to me at one point that I might put you back on the rookie list, and I'd been through all that. I was a 23 or something at the time, 24, and certainly see myself as mature. So I had a mature conversation with him and disagreed with him, and we sort of left that meeting. It was all amicable, and I'm very amicable with Ross these days. We still speak from time to time, but it was clear that there probably wasn't going to be a spot for me the following year. And it was probably only hours after that, I started getting a few calls from my manager, just sort of laying out what the options were, and what this delisted free agency was. And then Jason McCartney gave me a call, and he was sort of really great to me and really sort of close confidant of mine at Fremantle. And he'd just taken a role with the Dogs, and he hadn't told the club yet. And he said, "Look, I'm going to be leaving, and I'd love for you to come with me." So we started looking down the avenue of going into the Dogs, and a couple of weeks later, that all happened. So happened pretty quick, to be honest, and it was a pretty new. Again, part of me was like, do I have to get delisted again to go to another club? But it was just the way that it worked, and I can't even recall exactly how it all worked, but a few documents signed here and there, and I think Fremantle had to pay a little bit of my contract, I believe. But look, for a player like me, those sorts of avenues were great to extend your career. I mean, without that, probably I don't get the chance to go on and play more games and play my 50th and all that sort of stuff. So those sort of avenues that the AFL have created have been fantastic for longevity.
Hello. Should we get into Big Brother?
Absolutely.
Here we go. This is where we talk about a few footy trips, a few people that you may have roomed with over on the away trips as well, Nick. So why don't you fire away a couple of stories about your time, specifically at Port Adelaide, about your footy trips and who you roomed with?
Well, I when I was at Port, I always roomed with Tom Logan. It's been unfortunate. My first year at Freo, can't remember if Freo. My first year at Port, it was the year that we did. At the end of that first season, we went over to London to play an exhibition game against Geelong.
That's right.
And I'm spewing to this day. Barnesy, the doctor, I'd had problems with my calves the whole year, and we talked about surgery options, and it was agreed that it probably wasn't necessary. And then my twin brother went in for an operation on his calves, and we had this problem with our fascias, and we had to get a release. And anyway, the doctor of North Melbourne at the time, after my brother went in, picked up the phone to Barnesy and said, "Look, the boys traditionally have the same sort of injuries. Ed's calves were pretty bad. I reckon you should probably send Nick in." So I was getting ready to go to London, and about 2 days before, I got the phone call from the club saying, "Mate, you can't go. You got to go in for surgery." And I hadn't even had any tests or anything done, and so that put me out. And I'm still so upset about it, because from what I hear, it was a pretty amazing trip away. Adam Kingsley, actually, Kingers took probably 5 or 6 and I was meant to be one of them, away about 5 days before the game. Or maybe it was probably a week before the game, actually. And they went all through Europe, and there's some pretty great stories for kids that were sort of 19, 20 with a bloke of Kinga's age. I think he would have been 27, 28 at the time. So he led them astray, but I probably can't repeat too many of those stories. But the big one for us was we went to Phuket. We went to Koh Samui in Thailand, and that was my first sort of overseas trip actually as well. And I mean, to be honest, it was just absolute debauchery. For anyone that was on that trip, they'll tell you the same. And Primus had just gone into a coaching role either that year or the year before, and like he was quite a senior coach at that time. And I think Matty had said that, I better go along with everyone just to make sure that there's no trouble. I reckon Mattress was the most trouble at the whole thing.
Yeah.
I won't name names, but a few blokes ended up in prison for a night, and there was a few things. I remember Peter Rode had to he was considering getting on a plane at one point to sort out a few problems that had happened, and it was that was a pretty good one. But I reckon the best footy trip story that I had, and I'm sure he may not listen to this, so I probably won't get back to him, but was actually when I was at Freo. We went to Hong Kong, and Lockie Neal had just started that year, and Lockie's a beautiful young boy and didn't really know the world, and he's great fun on the field. He's great fun off the field. And Mickey Barlow and I sort of organised that trip with Hayden Ballantyne, and we were the older statesmen. Like I had the credit card that everyone had paid money on, and I was in control of that and sort of paid the way. And I remember the first night, it was we just got off the plane and there was 25 of us or something, and we painted the town red, and we woke up the next morning, and like Lockie's private school boy, hadn't really seen the world, and he'd certainly had too many drinks, and he came knocking on our door the next morning, and he just looked white as a ghost. I was like, mate, what's wrong? And he came into our room and was like, oh fuck. And I was like, what's happening? And he sort of lifted up his shirt, and he bloody woken up with a tattoo on his chest. And the story goes, I can't remember what he said, he was like, mate, and it's this Chinese symbol or something. And it's like, God, that's what happened. He goes, mate, I can't remember. I just woke up. And he said, do you know what it means? He goes, yeah, no, it means like life or love or something like that. And I'm like, okay. And then, the next day you roll into drinking again, and everyone's having a good laugh about it. And at some point he went up to some Chinese bloke and said, oh mate, so what does this mean? It means love or life, right? And he's like, no, it means like cow or something. So he's got this tat, he's still got it. He's got this tat just on his chest that he got on footy trip. So that was pretty good. Yeah.
That is sensational.
Yeah. The Brownlow medalist. So
cow tattooed on him.
Something like that. Lockie would tell the story better, but yeah, it was pretty funny.
Oh, that is terrific.
I'm sure his mum was not happy with him.
Cow.
Yeah.
That's exquisite.
Yeah.
Mick, speaking of Big Brother, we shall touch on the subject. Ed, in the Big Brother house.
Yeah, I thought this was coming.
Yeah, it definitely was lined up. What was that like for yourself, seeing your brother on Big Brother?
Mate, it was pretty embarrassing, to be honest. I was still playing footy, so I was at the Dogs at the time, and I mean, the only teammate of mine that didn't give me shit was Tom Williamson, who was really into the show. He was the only one that didn't. Tommy was right into it, but and actually Griff, I think, from memory, I can't remember, but everyone else just gave me shit, and fortunately I wasn't playing. I'd hurt my shoulder again, and I wasn't really playing by that stage. Sort of did look like my career was done. So I mean, at first I was pretty not dirty on him, but I was certainly pretty embarrassed. But as he sort of went through the weeks, and I don't know how, but as that show, got more and more viewership and became bigger and bigger as the weeks progressed, I thought, well, my career's done. I may as well ride his coattails for a while. So, I was front and center as soon as he came out, because you might remember back then they used to sort of tour Australia and go to nightclubs and do all that stuff. And I was young, single, and all those things. So it was a bit of fun for me at the back end of it, but it was pretty embarrassing for the whole family whilst he was on it.
That's terrific. I couldn't imagine what I'd do if I had a family member on Big Brother. I think I've seen a couple on stage tonight.
The one thing that all of us said to him, please don't get a relationship. And do anything sexual on TV. And of course, that's what he did. So.
Oh, that's good.
Phenomenal. That's very, very good. Huddo, should we do random port merch?
Absolutely.
All right, Nick Lower, random port merch. This is where we have stuff lying around the house that maybe is a little bit of value that might be a bit random in a household. That's random port merch. And Huddo, you're going to kick us off.
All right. I went digging through the Guernsey cupboard as I usually do, and I found this absolute masterpiece of Guernsey. It is a Ultra Adelaide red training top.
Training top, yeah. God, that brings back memories, doesn't it?
Yeah. So
I think that was for the B team, so I would have worn that a lot.
It's match worn. But yeah, so some bloke ended up selling it years ago. He had that one and the black one, which I also have. $25 each.
I've just noticed it didn't have the little GPS pocket on the back, so it must have been sort of 2006 maybe.
So someone either has voluntarily bought that, or and so have I, and taken it. So there we go.
Brings back memories.
Nick, what was? Do you have any random port merch besides the lovely jacket? Besides the jacket,
mate. The thing that just came to mind. I don't know where it is, but remember that they had that Thunderbolt? I think it was just for a one-off game. They had this. It was a horrible Guernsey. It was like it had this like Thunderbolt through the middle and then sort of like lightning stripes on the side. I've got that one somewhere, but I mean, I still chuckled thinking about the Guernsey today that they wear, which I really love. And it came, we used to do that round a year where a supporter could, design a Guernsey, and then you win the comp and you wear it for the game. And I mean, we had some good ones and we had some bad ones, but I mean, the Guernsey today, and I know there's been some slight abbreviations. It's based off one of those winners, so it's I mean, there's been some interesting merch around the place, but I think for what I have in the storage shed, that's probably the winner, the disgusting Thunderbolt Guernsey.
I will say,
was that one of the Planet Teal ones? The big.
Yeah, it was. Like, I mean, we had a few of those, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot to play with, do we?
Sometimes not.
Actually, I will ask before I get to mine. 2009 Clash Guernsey, the Thunderbolt, the white with the teal back.
Yeah,
I was a fan.
Oh wow!
I love it.
Thank you, Nick.
I don't know. I think they're on a much better. I like the design now, far better than what we used to have to wear. I mean, the old like first ever Guernseys back in late 90s. I don't mind those, and I know we've worn them a couple of times as a sort of salute to the past. But happy to bring those ones back. But there's plenty of Guernseys I wouldn't bring back.
Yep, I agree with that.
Just quickly, Port Adelaide scoreboard.
Oh wow,
that's a clock, bruv.
Scoreboard clock.
The double up. That's great.
You've still got it in the box.
That's collector's edition.
I've got mine up on the wall.
That will be for when I get my house in the next 15 years.
Oh yeah, good luck with that.
On the wall.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Great one.
All right. Let's do quick fire questions, Huddo, because I think we're very enticed to see what Nick Lower is tasting. He's already got a nice beer there, so that's a good start.
The kids are down, so the only time we can have one.
Yeah, the kids are down and Nick Lower's up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, let's get straight into quick fire questions. Nick Lower, are you ready?
Ready as I can be, I believe.
All right, so we'll start with your favourite TV show.
Well, the one I'm watching right now is, and it's escaped me. Well, I just finished Vikings. Vikings is right up there for me. Yeah,
I agree. I like that show. Your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, gee, I'm just trying to think what my wedding song was, because that's the one. Oh God!
You might want to remember that one.
I hope my wife doesn't watch this. I'm gonna have to come back. Can I pass?
We'll pass and we'll come back.
It'll come back to me. But yeah, there's a song, and it was in my wedding. Maybe Logs will remember from my wedding.
The wedding song.
Wedding song. If I can't remember, I'll let you know.
All right, done. Your favorite Simpsons character?
Oh, Bart Simpson.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Your favorite flavored potato chip?
Light and tangy.
Oh,
Thins, light, and
That's-
tangy.
very
I
good.
don't know what it was. Anytime I used to be sick at home from school, my mum would buy me light and tangy chips. So I don't know the psychology there because it just enticed you to stay home. But yeah, hard to beat a light and tangy.
Light and tangy. Your go-to Mario Kart character.
I was always a Mario man.
Oh,
Yeah,
Straight
always. Yeah, just straight up,
It's almost like he had pace more than
Yeah.
the rest. It was just.
Yeah, I must say I had a few good wins as the princess, but
Each.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. And lastly, the most important question. This will be adjudged of how you perform on the podcast. What's your favorite shapes flavor?
Well, I'm a pizza shape man.
Oh,
You're a barbecue, are you?
I'm
Yeah,
chicken crimpy and Ant barbecue.
Oh, you don't tell me you're a crimpy man. Oh. Yuck.
Big crimpy man. Love crimpy.
Man. My wife's a crimpy girl. And,
Yes.
it could cost her a marriage, I reckon.
I don't know how myself and the missus work as well. She's barbecue, so
Yeah. Oh, look, I mean, I think it's interchangeable, pizza and barbecue. I think I'd have to say I've probably had more pizza shapes in my life, so I'll lean that way. But, it's a 60-40 decision.
So the respect's there for barbecue. At least.
there's no respect for crimpy whatsoever.
No, zero respect for crimpy. I think I've had one biscuit in my life, and that's it. Yuck.
Shit.
I love that. I love that a lot. All right, let's go into obscure Port Adelaide players. This is where we mention players that have been around the club. They've played 100 games or less, and they deserve a bit more love than they give. Huddo, kick us off.
Oh, so the funny thing is now it's going to be one of Nick's mates.
Yeah, probably.
Played 87 games for Port Adelaide. The Crow Killer, he was called. Matty Thomas.
Oh, yeah. God, Matt, he's hard to go by. Did very well, Matt, when he went on to Richmond to play 100. It was a well fought 100 for Matt.
Well deserved too. We loved watching Matty Thomas. He was always a hard nut. So
the wrecking ball.
Yeah, wrecking ball. He killed a lot of Crows players in his time.
He did.
Matty. So
he put Tommy Logan's brother-in-law down, Big Trent Henschel.
Yeah. We spoke to Tommy about that.
Yeah, it was bad. I was right behind. I think Tommy might have been as well, but I was right behind that. Look, it was horrible.
Oh, yeah. Now Trent's the club.
Yeah.
Weird how it all happens.
I know.
Nick, your obscure Port player, have you got one in mind?
I've got a few in mind. Big Brucey Willits comes to mind, but I reckon Tommy Logan would have said that maybe. Daniel Stewart.
Oh,
Daniel Stewart, yeah.
Dan Stewart.
Big Snowy. Who's a great mate. Noodles, Elijah Ware.
Yeah, we had him. I think we had him for you mentioned him on Tommy's pod, was he?
Yeah,
something like that, I think.
Or Dom, yeah, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of great ones. I mean, most of my draft, I'm trying to think. Tim Luby, rookie, didn't play a game. I don't know if you remember Lubes. He lived with Alapate for a while. But there's plenty of great people that have passed through the club that unfortunately haven't made it to the triple digits. But plenty of good people.
That's who we love.
Mine was going to be, actually, he was part of your draft, Jonathan Giles.
Oh, Joffa. We were only talking about Joff the other day. He's happily married man with a little one, but he's, what a great journeyman in the end. I remember, I still remember the images of him when we first got drafted. He was such a beanpole, but fast forward to when he got a handle on life and how to get big, and he was a monster of a bloke. Probably the other one that springs to mind that was our draft that I really reckon could have been an amazing talent was Hugh Minson, Will Minson's brother. And Hugh came to the club with knee injuries, and it's amazing that he actually got drafted. His knee was shocking, but the things he did for almost 7-foot bloke was unbelievable.
I remember when he retired, I was like, shit.
Yeah, it's a shame because I've seen some of his raw talent. He was pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. We had a few big blokes actually go through the club at that time, and
we did.
Damien Duluga as well.
Big Fabs,
big KFC man.
Yeah. I wonder how many games Fabs played. Not enough. He could have been the backbone of any club, I reckon.
I reckon he played 12 off the top of my head.
Yeah, I reckon he played less than 20.
Yeah. Oh, there it is, 11. You got 11.
11. There you go. You're close.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, almost.
All right, let's go into our final but big segment. This is everyone's favourite. It's called Better Call Sal, where we talk about our favourite Stephen Salopek moments.
And Salopek finishes it.
And Nick Lower, have you got a story about Stephen Salopek for us?
Well, I mean, the only one that comes to mind is, I think I alluded to it earlier. I was Troy Chaplin's groomsman in his wedding, and I was really good mates with Chappie, and one of those blokes that we actually shared lockers next to each other, so we spent a lot of time together. But I think at face value, Sal probably would have been perceived as Chappie's closest mate. They're good mates, and I remember Chappie sort of saying, asking me to be part of his wedding, which was not expected, and certainly a really nice privilege, but I just assumed that Sal was a groomsman as well. And I think it was over a couple of beers, and Chappie actually asked me to be his groomsman after he'd had a few beers. So I still remember the next day thinking, did he really mean that or not? But I went over to Sal. I was like, oh, mate, we'll be groomsmen at Chappie's wedding. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, you're not a groomsman? He's like, no. But
no.
Yeah. But I mean, Sal, it's funny how you sort of wires cross as you move away from footy. I mean, Sal's in commercial real estate as well, and he works for one of the big four companies, and so do I. So it's been funny to watch his progression through sort of the industrial stuff that he does and what I do now. So we stay in touch from time to time. But there's I'm sure I've got plenty of I've certainly got plenty of sooking stories about Sal. I was going to say Sal would laugh at me saying that, but he's such a great player. I mean, in terms of kicking abilities, and I think the one thing that was probably the benefit of playing at so many clubs is you get such a diverse range of skill sets. And I mean, Sal's right up there as one of the best kicks of the footy you'll ever see. The other one's Duffy from Freo. Paul Duffield was just an unbelievable kick, and Dewey. But yeah, Sal's skills were sublime. But he was always good for being the butt of many people's jokes. That's for sure.
We love Sal. We absolutely.
Yeah. It's hard not to. It's hard not to.
Absolutely.
Sal's terrific. Huddo, any final thoughts, mate, before we finish up?
I do have a question that I do actually want to bring back up that I think we asked Bobby Carlisle and haven't asked anybody else. So you usually get the question of who was the hardest player to ever play on while you played? Yeah. We'll do the 180. Who was the easiest player you ever played on?
Well, it's going to have to be Chappie because I got Brownlow votes on him.
Yes.
Yeah. That's unfair, but no, look, I mean, there's not too many easy ones, is there? But it was nice to have a day where he wasn't quite reading the ball properly, so it sort of fell my way.
That's awesome. I think Bobby said it was like, Buddy was easy. He just went through like the best key forwards.
No. It's unfortunately, I had a period of time where to get a role in the midfield at Freo, we sort of played like a pseudo tag role. So I managed to play on most of the top midfielders back in that period. And I can tell you it's not fun having to stick close to a Gary Abler or a Patrick Dangerfield or, whoever it might be. It's, I would tag Boki one night and that certainly wasn't easy. So there's plenty of good ones. You can have it.
Oh, shit. But honestly, Nick, fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been an absolute joy, and it was a joy watching you play as well. Even Thanks. If you didn't play in the 07 Grand Final, the moment.
I appreciate it, guys. It's certainly nice to relive many of those memories, and certainly a very special place in my heart, the Port LA Football Club. So you're doing a great job, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.